Imagine being 13 years old and discovering something about your father that makes you see him as a monster. Something so disturbing that you can't even look at him the same way anymore. Now imagine that secret is the last thing you ever know. November 18th, 2012. A boy boards a plane he doesn't want to board. His mother hugs him goodbye at the gate, teasing one last embrace from him. He pulls away, walks down the jetway, and vanishes into a nightmare that would take 9 years to solve. The Colorado wilderness keeps secrets well. It held Dylan Redwines for almost 3 years. And when the truth finally came out in that Durango courtroom, it was more horrific than anyone could have imagined. This is the story of a father's rage, a son's last night alive, and the darkest family secret you've ever heard. Before we dive in, or if you're into deep dives on the most disturbing true crime cases, hit that subscribe button, because this channel goes where others won't. Dylan Redwine was just a normal kid from Monument, Colorado. He loved video games, hanging out with his friends, and his mother, Elaine Hall. By all accounts, Dylan was energetic, fun-loving, the kind of 13-year-old who still had his whole life ahead of him. But Dylan's family wasn't normal, not even close. His parents, Mark Redwine and Elaine Hall, had been through one of those divorces that leave scars, the kind where nothing is ever truly settled. From 2005 through 2009, they fought in court. And even after the divorce was finalized, they kept fighting over custody of Dylan and his older brother, Corey. Dylan lived primarily with his mother in Colorado Springs, but the court ordered him to visit his father, Mark, who lived in a house near Vallecito in the mountains outside Durango, 21 miles northeast of town, remote, isolated. The kind of place where no one can hear you scream. And here's the thing. Dylan didn't want to go. Text messages show that by November 2012, Dylan was actively resistant to visiting his father. The relationship between father and son had soured badly because Dylan knew something about his father, something that had shattered his image of the man completely. And that something we're going to get to in just a minute, but first you need to understand what happened on the night Dylan disappeared. November 18th, 2012. Dylan's flight lands at Durango La Plata County Airport. Surveillance footage from the airport shows Mark Redwine picking up his son. You watch their body language. They barely interact. There's no warmth, no connection. Just two people going through the motions because a court order says they have to. They stop at a Walmart. Again, security cameras capture them. Again, there's little to no personal interaction between father and son. Dylan wanted to stay at a friend's house that night. Mark refused. They drove to Mark's house in Vallecito, just the two of them, alone in the mountains. Dylan made plans with a friend to meet up early the next morning at 6:30 a.m. He was looking forward to it. Anything to get out of that house. But 6:30 came and went. Dylan never showed up. His friend texted, "Where are you?" Silence. Dylan Redwine was never seen alive again. Mark's story? He claimed he left Dylan at home around 7:30 a.m. to run errands in town, and said he came back 4 hours later and Dylan was gone, just gone. Left behind was a bowl of cereal on the table and the TV on Nickelodeon. Mark Redwine immediately called the authorities. But here's what's chilling. That night, as search crews scoured the dark woods around Mark's property with flashlights, desperately looking for a missing 13-year-old boy, all the lights in Mark Redwine's house went dark at 11 p.m. at a time when most parents would be outside with a flashlight themselves, at a time when most parents would leave every light on in case their child was lost and trying to find their way home. Mark Redwine turned off all the lights and went to bed. So what destroyed the relationship between Dylan and his father? What was the secret that made a 13-year-old boy disgusted by his own dad? In 2011, and Dylan and his older brother Corey went on a road trip with their father. Just a family trip. They were staying in a hotel room together, and one night, while Mark was sleeping, Dylan was using his father's computer. That's when he found them. The photos. Images that showed Mark Redwine dressed in women's underwear, wearing a diaper, and consuming feces from that diaper. Dylan and Corey locked themselves in the bathroom to look at the photos. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. Corey took pictures of the images on his phone because they knew. They knew this was something their father would deny, something he'd want buried. Corey Redwine would later testify in court. Dylan was pretty disgusted. Dylan lost any reason for him to look up to Mark that day. And you can imagine, right? You're 13 years old. You're trying to figure out who you are, who you want to be. You discover something like this about your father. The relationship between Dylan and Mark deteriorated rapidly after that. By August 2012, just 3 months before Dylan disappeared, text messages show Dylan asking his brother Corey to send him those photos. Why? Because Mark had given Dylan a lecture about how Elaine and Corey were bad role models. Dylan texted Corey, hey, send me those poop pics of Papa because he gave me a speech about you guys being a bad example, and I want to show him who he really is. Dylan asked for those photos 7 times. 7 times. He wanted ammunition. He wanted to confront his father with the truth. Corey never sent them. He was worried about what would happen if Dylan had those photos while alone with their father. He didn't want to fuel a bigger fire. But here's the terrifying part. Prosecutors believe Dylan didn't need Corey to send the photos. They believe Dylan already had access to them, and they believe that on the night of November 18th, 2012, Dylan confronted his father, and Mark Redwine snapped. Within days of Dylan's disappearance, Elaine Hall, Dylan's mother, was suspicious. She texted Mark. He wouldn't just leave, he would have called me. I am so suspicious of you right now. How could he just disappear? She knew. A mother knows. Law enforcement executed multiple search warrants on Mark Redwine's home, and what they found was damning. Forensic testing discovered traces of Dylan's blood in Mark's living room. Not much, just traces. But it was there, and the defense would later argue it was infinitesimally small, that it could happen to anyone living in a house. But then the cadaver dogs came. Cadaver dogs are trained to detect human decomposition, and they hit on Mark Redwine's living room. They hit on the bed of his pickup truck. The dogs detected the recent presence of a corpse. Mark claimed Dylan ran away, that he left of his own accord. But cadaver dogs don't lie. Meanwhile, another disturbing detail emerged. One of Mark's ex-wives, not Elaine, but a previous wife named Betsy Horvath, came forward with a chilling statement. She told investigators that during their divorce and custody proceedings, Mark had told her he would kill the kids before he let her have them. And she said Mark once told her that if he ever had to dispose of a body, he would leave it out in the mountains. The mountains. The same mountains where 7 months later hikers would find Dylan's partial remains 8 miles from Mark's house. June 2013. 7 months after Dylan disappeared. Hikers discover partial human remains on Middle Mountain Road, about 8 miles up from Mark Redwine's property. The bones have been confirmed as Dylan's, but Dylan's skull is missing, and that's critical, because skulls can tell us how someone died. The search continues. Months pass. Then, in November 2015, more than 2 years later, another pair of hikers finds Dylan's skull. It's located about 1.5 miles further up the mountain from where the other remains were found. And this is where the case becomes undeniable. Dr. Diane France, a forensic anthropologist with decades of experience, she worked on identifying remains from the 9/11 attacks, examined Dylan's skull. And what she found was horrifying. Dylan suffered blunt force trauma to his skull above his left eye, a fracture consistent with either his head being struck with force or his head striking something with force. But that wasn't all. There were 2 small markings on Dylan's skull, straight lines, less than a millimeter wide. Dr. France testified that these marks were made by a sharp instrument, a knife. The marks left V-shaped indentations in the bone, characteristic of a blade, not an animal's tooth. I think I can say it was a sharp instrument, Dr. France testified. I know of nothing in nature that would create such marks. The defense hired their own expert, Dr. Bruce Anderson, who tried to argue the marks could be from animal scavenging. But under cross-examination, he admitted he wasn't familiar with the Colorado mountain terrain. And when prosecutors pressed him on whether Dylan's intact sock and shoe were consistent with animal scavenging, he had to admit they weren't. Wildlife experts testified that no animal in that area, not bears, not mountain lions, not coyotes, would transport a skull 1.5 miles uphill from other remains. Animals conserve energy. They don't carry food up mountains. Someone moved Dylan's skull, someone human. And there was only one person with motive, means, and opportunity. It took investigators years to build the case. In July 2017, a grand jury indicted Mark Redwine on charges of second-degree murder and child abuse, resulting in death. Mark was arrested in Bellingham, or Washington, where he'd been working as a truck driver. He maintained his innocence, claimed it was all a miscarriage of justice. The trial didn't begin until 2021. COVID-19 caused multiple delays. But when it finally happened, it lasted 5 weeks. Dozens of witnesses, hundreds of pieces of evidence. The prosecution laid out their theory. Mark Redwine killed his 13-year-old son in a fit of rage after Dylan confronted him about the compromising photos. The prosecutor, Fred Johnson, told the jury, "A damaged relationship, exposed with compromising photographs in the hands of a 13-year-old who is disgusted by it, triggered a violent rage in the defendant." Mark killed Dylan in his living room. That's where the blood was found. Then he sanitized the crime scene, and he dismembered his son, removing Dylan's head from his body, and hid the remains in the mountains, in a place he knew, a place he was familiar with. Remember what his ex-wife said? That Mark told her if he ever had to get rid of a body, he'd leave it in the mountains. The defense argued Dylan ran away and was attacked by a wild animal, but the evidence told a different story. On July 16, 2021, after 5 weeks of testimony, the jury found Mark Redwine guilty on both counts: second-degree murder, child abuse, resulting in death. Dylan's mother, Elaine Hall, cried as the verdict was read, October 8, 2021. Mark Redwine stood before Judge Jeffrey Wilson for sentencing. The prosecution asked for the maximum, 48 years in prison. They cited Mark's complete lack of remorse, his refusal to accept responsibility, his cold-hearted denials. Mark declined to speak in court. But in a pre-sentence investigation report, he wrote a few terse words: innocent of all charges, miscarriage of justice, fake conviction, sham trial. I take this circumstance very seriously and want to make clear that I, too, have lost a child I love more than life itself. Judge Wilson didn't buy it. I have trouble remembering a convicted criminal defendant that has shown such an utter lack of remorse for his criminal behavior, the judge said. First of all, you killed your son, a 13-year-old boy. At 13, he's still a little boy. As the father, it's your obligation to protect your son. Keep him from harm. Instead of that, you inflicted enough injury on him to kill him in your living room. After the passion of whatever caused you to act the way you did subsided, you didn't think about Dylan. You thought about yourself. You sanitized the crime scene. You hid Dylan's body, and you went so far as to remove his head from the rest of his body. Judge Wilson sentenced Mark Redwine to the maximum, 48 years in prison. Mark is now 60 years old. If he serves his full sentence, he'll be 108 when he's released. Elaine Hall said after sentencing, "It's justice as far as justice can go. There will never be enough time for taking Dylan's life, but at least he hopefully won't get out. Hopefully, he'll die in prison." Dylan Redwine was 13 years old when he boarded that plane. On November 18th, 2012. He didn't want to go. He begged not to go, but the court said he had to. His mother hugged him goodbye. She teased one last embrace from him at the airport gate. He pulled away and walked toward his father, and it was the last time she would ever see her son alive. 9 years later, justice came, but it can never bring Dylan back. It can never undo what Mark Redwine did in that living room on a cold November night in the Colorado mountains. The darkness that lived inside Mark Redwine, the secrets, the shame, the rage, it consumed his own son. And if you think about it, that's the most terrifying part. The monster wasn't hiding in the woods. The monster was waiting at home. If this deep dive into one of Colorado's most disturbing cases captivated you, make sure you're subscribed. Hit that notification bell, because there are more stories like this, more cases where evil hides in plain sight, more secrets that demand to be told. Drop a comment below. Did you follow the Dylan Redwine case when it happened? And what part of this story shocked you the most? And remember, sometimes the darkness isn't in the wilderness. Sometimes it's sitting right across the dinner table. I'll see you in the next one.